Kamala Harris's new book entitled 107 Days, telling the story of her brief moment as the Democratic nominee for president, now scheduled for release on September 23rd. And as an added bonus, anyone who buys her book gets 5 emails a day for the rest of their life asking them to buy more copies. The book was supposed to be written by Joe Biden until George Clooney decided Biden was way too old. Actually, former President Joe Biden is reportedly disappointed by only getting a $10 million advance from Little Brown Publishing to write his memoirs. Only $10 million. You know, inflation is like the police. It's never there when you really need it. Only $10 million. Then again, the measly payday might have something to do with the title of Biden's book, The Crap I Think I Remember by Jim Biden. I think it's Joe, not Jim. Pretty horrible title for a book, but a lot better than the original, Jake Tapper Can Kiss My Bony White Irish Ass by John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Probably ghostwritten by Ted Sorensen. Yeah, I can see how a title like that might create problems with your publisher, but I'd read it. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris now sparking rumors she might try again for president in 2028. This after announcing she will not run for governor of California in 2026. Too bad, because I was so looking forward to 8,000 emails a day asking for a donation. Lord knows I'm no expert on raising money, but Kamala, if you're listening, when soliciting donations to pay off debts from your 2024 presidential campaign, you know, the one you lost, maybe you shouldn't ask that checks be made payable to the Harris Victory Fund. I think the victory ship already sailed and you're not on board. Also, not quite sure why she's not running for governor. I think she would win. In fact, I already went ahead and printed hundreds of worst-case scenario mugs, proving there's absolutely no way Kamala Harris can possibly lose the race for governor. And now she says she's not running. What am I going to do with all these worst-case scenario mugs? In all seriousness, I do think she would win if she decided to run for governor of California, because back in February, a poll showed 57% of California Democrats saying she'd get their vote for governor. Now, granted, a more recent University of California Irvine poll shows only 24% saying they would vote for her, but she still led the field, and if she were to declare, and it's not too late, I have no doubt she could be the next governor of California. Harris, by virtue of being the 2024 nominee for president, is the automatic frontrunner going into the 2028 presidential race. Obama's campaign manager, David Axelrod, now saying she's running. But you'd have to go all the way back to Adlai Stevenson in the 1950s to find a Democratic nominee losing 2 presidential races in a row. Hillary and Al Gore didn't run again, even though they both won the popular vote. So Harris is probably better off running for governor of California. She's going to be a tough sell as a presidential candidate, despite all her qualifications. But in last year's election, she got 80 fewer electoral votes than Biden did 4 years earlier. And she also received 6.2 million fewer popular votes than Joe Biden. Unlike Biden, Harris lost Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Even though the Democratic down-ballot candidates in each state, except Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, they won their respective races. For the record, I got all those races correct, except for Casey in Pennsylvania, and I got the blue wall wrong. Well, if Democrats want to win the Electoral College, they might need to go back to 1992 and learn from back when they nominated Bill Clinton from Arkansas and Al Gore, his vice president from Tennessee. I believe we are about to hear a growing chorus for Democrats to develop a Southern strategy identical to the one that worked in 1992. Democrats lost 3 presidential elections in a row before Clinton showed Democrats how to win again by being both a Southerner and a Republican. This is why you're going to hear a lot about Andy Beshear, who is the Democratic governor from Kentucky. Yes, Kentucky. He comes from a political dynasty. His father was also the governor of Kentucky. Beshear reelected in 2023, winning by 5 percentage points. Medicaid expansion began under his dad, but the son got rid of work requirements. And as governor, Andy Beshear's handed in 4 of Kentucky's largest budget surpluses ever. Again, Beshear's a Democrat from the same state that sends Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul to Washington. Then there's Roy Cooper. He's on the right, the former 2-term Democratic governor of North Carolina. He just announced he's running next year for the Senate seat currently held by Republican Thom Tillis. That's now an open seat. Tillis is quitting. If Cooper flips that seat blue, may be unlikely, but if he flips it blue, Roy Cooper, I believe, automatically becomes the front runner for the Democratic nomination in 2028. Because Democrats can't rely anymore on the blue wall. Hillary lost it, and so did Harris. They need to find votes in the South the way they once did. Jimmy Carter won in 1976. As a response to Nixon's 1968 Southern strategy. The Democrats pivoted quickly. Nixon took the South, got all of it in 1972, Southern strategy, but the Democrats in 1976 said, well, we better nominate the governor of Georgia, Jimmy Carter, who was not as far to the left as some of you like to remember him. Teddy Kennedy sabotaged Jimmy Carter's presidency because Carter wasn't liberal enough. So Democrats knew how to win the South right after Nixon's Southern strategy. Think about this. Bill Clinton in 1996 won Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Tennessee, and West Virginia. But 20 years later, his wife Hillary lost all of them. And I think because she was no longer from Arkansas. She left, and so did Bill. Bill served as governor for 12 years in Arkansas, goes to the White House, never goes back to Arkansas. Hillary, after the White House, became a senator from New York instead of moving back to Arkansas and nurturing the Democratic Party down there. She should have run for office in Arkansas, not New York. Voters didn't leave the Democratic Party. Democrats, like the Clintons, left the voters in the South. As vice president, Al Gore delivered his home state of Tennessee in 92 and 96, but by 2000, when he was running for president, he couldn't even win his home state of Tennessee. George W. Bush beat Gore by 4 percentage points in Tennessee. Had Gore won Tennessee, he could have lost Florida and still won the presidency. So, Democrats are big on identity. Okay, what is more identifiable than where you're from? People don't define themselves solely by their religion, gender, sexuality, race, income, education level, or ethnicity. Where you are from is very much who you are. Watch the Mets. You have black, white, Asian, lesbian, transgender, Jewish, Arab, Muslim Mets fans with college degrees, without college degrees, high school dropouts. What is the one identity they all share? They're New Yorkers. They're Mets fans because they're New Yorkers. Democrats want to win playing identity politics and not lean as far as they should into class warfare. Then they have to lean in on the biggest identity of them all, geography. They need a Southern strategy, and that means nominating a candidate for president or vice president from the South. Another strong Southern candidate, for the Democratic nomination is Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. In American history, he's just one of 3 black candidates ever to get elected governor of a state. Only 3. 5 black governors total in American history. 3 were elected, 2 became governor after the elected governor had to step aside. Governor Wes Moore served in Afghanistan, Bronze Star, and is a Rhodes Scholar, but he's also a former investment banker, and that's going to cause problems with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a real progressive Democratic presidential candidate from the South. Now, you can find them in the House of Representatives in the South, but Democratic governors and senators who win statewide elections in the South are what we're looking for, and it's tricky, if not impossible, for a progressive Democrat to get elected statewide in the South. The closest, I think, leave a comment, maybe I'm wrong, I think the closest we have right now to a genuine progressive Democrat from the South would be Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock, who was reelected in 2022. He holds a PhD from Union Theological Seminary, New York, and preaches from the very same pulpit as Dr. King. He has been the senior pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta since 2005. If I had to pick a presidential nominee from the South, it would be Warnock. As a matter of fact, if I had to pick any candidate from anywhere, it would be Warnock. Is he Bernie? No, but I don't think Bernie is running in 2028. I think instead, Bernie's once again planning on being a force to be reckoned with, something he was not last year, which is one of the many reasons Kamala Harris lost. Bernie campaigned for her, but she was ashamed of Bernie and that wing of her party. Meanwhile, with Kamala Harris not running for governor of California, that now makes former Congresswoman Katie Porter the front runner for governor of California. Porter ran for Senate last year. She was defeated by Adam Schiff. Porter is the closest we have to Elizabeth Warren. Like Elizabeth Warren, Porter's not a democratic socialist, but she filters her entire domestic agenda through the prism of how Wall Street destroys America. Governor Tim Walz, Harris's running mate, is fantastic, but he's from Minnesota. He's not bringing anything to the Electoral College. Democrats already have Minnesota. Again, I would vote for Walz in a heartbeat. I'd vote for Kamala Harris in a heartbeat. Remember this. The first Democratic primary in 2028 is expected to be South Carolina. Remember, Biden changed it. Now, it may go back to New Hampshire and Iowa, but Biden switched it from Iowa and New Hampshire to South Carolina. So South Carolina will be the kingmaker, and those 4 other Democrats I just mentioned from the South, they automatically have a leg up over anyone else eyeing the Democratic nomination. Now, traditionally, the vice presidential candidate on a losing ticket often becomes the front runner in the next cycle. In many ways, Coach Walz has a historical advantage over Harris, especially since the smartest thing she did was pick him as her running mate. I think she'd be better off running for governor of California.